I'm Caden, here with my brother,
Cal,
and you're watching Eating W's.
eat the W.
That's a W. Let's eat one. Let's eat one. That's a W.
On today's episode of Eating W's, we have our NFL Week 6 recap. But before we jump into the games of a very exciting week, much more exciting than the prior few weeks have been as a whole overall. But before we jump into those, we got a few tidbits of news, starting off with the Cardinals wide receiver Marquise Brown, who they just got from the Ravens this offseason, will be out for the next 6 weeks with a foot fracture. Which, when you're this far into the season, 6 weeks is a lot. That's not, now he's not coming back till week 12, 13, 14. That gets to be deep into the season.
And it could be even longer. He's had a history of foot injuries going all the way back to his days at Oklahoma.
Yep. And then to replace that said Marquise Brown, the Cardinals made a trade with the Carolina Panthers. In this trade, the Cardinals will receive wide receiver Robbie Anderson, who's a very similar wide receiver to what Marquise Brown is, kind of that speedy deep threat. And in return, the Panthers get a 2024 sixth round pick, as well as a 2025 seventh round pick. So Robbie Anderson wanted out of Carolina. It's pretty obvious to tell. If you watched the game, he was yelling at his wide receiver coach and got sent to the locker room. So that was pretty decent compensation for the Panthers, considering they could have gotten nothing. It could have ended up
they were on
just
the verge
cut him.
of just cutting him.
Yeah.
So for them to get something back is at least good for the Panthers, although it won't help them this year.
I know it's sure not much, but it's kind of more than I expected, I won't lie. Okay. And then now we will jump straight into the games. So starting off with the Thursday night game of the Washington Commanders heading to Chicago to take on the Bears, and they pick up a win by the score of 12-7. Now, this was a even lower scoring game than last Thursday night game. Last Thursday night game prior to this one was the Colts and the Broncos, which ended in a score of 12-9, and everyone made fun of it for being a low-scoring, sloppy game, which it, of course, was, as a 12-9 game would be. And the Bears said, "Hold my beer," and only put up 7 points while allowing 12. So even lower point total, which seems a little mind-blowing. But again, with that low of a point total, a sloppy game overall. And the funniest part is the Bears lost in the most Bears way I can imagine by muffing a punt at the end. They had a chance for a game-winning drive and muffed a punt and lost it.
And for their only touchdown, it was a free play when there were 12 men on the field. So for their only touchdown, the Commanders had 12 players on the field for it and were not able to stop it. So just go figure.
That seems about right. Yeah, overall, not much to say with that game. Next up, we got the first Sunday game on our list with the San Francisco 49ers heading to Atlanta to face the Falcons and losing by a score of 14-28. Now, my boy Mariota finally showed what he can do, putting up 3 total touchdowns, 2 passing, 1 rushing. I think he had just under 200 passing yards, and I want to say around the area of 50 to 60 rushing yards. So overall, an efficient game for Mariota in which he put up a lot of touchdowns and were able to pick up a win in what I would say was a pretty good upset over a Niners team, especially a Niners defense that a lot of people say are solid.
Yeah, this was a pretty surprising win for the Falcons. I think this was just your typical case of a West Coast team going to the East Coast to play a noon game, and they weren't ready for it.
It happens, it really does. And then so this is kind of funny because this, I'm going to say it opens the division up for the Falcons. We saw the Panthers, Saints, and Bucks all take a loss this week. And the Falcons take a win. I want to say they got to only be 1-2 games out of first place at this point. The Falcons have a chance to take this division as the weeks go on.
I believe so, yeah. The NFC South is pretty weak this year, with only the Panthers really being the only ones out of it at 1-5.
Yeah, crazy to say that, but the Falcons got a chance there. Moving on to a game Callan most likely doesn't want to talk about, but we are anyway. We got the New York Jets beating the Green Bay Packers in Green Bay by a score of 27-10, and I'll let you take the start on this one, Callan.
Well, hats off to the Jets. They figured out that, you keep just giving us body blows, we'll eventually kind of give up there, and they kind of got out ahead late in the game and really ran away with it. And for the Packers offense, I'm just at a loss of words for it. And that whole team just seems kind of lost right now. I'm not sure what to say. I'm not sure what's going wrong. Rodgers said that they're going to simplify some things, so maybe with the young receiving corps, perhaps things are a bit too complicated in this complex offense. I don't know. I hate to say that because in the NFL, if you can't be complicated and complex, you're going to be pretty basic and get figured out pretty quickly. So hopefully they're just able to turn it around and get back on track, because it's been a rough couple of weeks against a couple of New York teams.
Yeah, it's a bad situation to have that many rookies. And now I saw Randall Cobb left with an injury.
Yeah,
I think
he has a high ankle sprain.
I think
he'll be out 2 to 4 weeks.
2 to 4 weeks?
Yep.
Okay, I was going to say, I'm not sure about his timetable. So now you truly are to a point where it's just rookies and I guess Sammy Watkins. But
he's still on IR.
He's still on IR as well. So you're to a point where it's all rookies. So you need to simplify things
there's
down.
still Lazard.
Which you're right, it does get to where you get completely shut down and figured out by defensive coordinators, but it's just a really bad situation because that's a big jump up into the NFL. But yeah, like Callan said, hats off to the Jets, and it's an ironic turn of events for the Packers where the defense is kind of carrying the offense, which is something we haven't seen in Green Bay, at least for my lifetime, with guys like Favre and Rodgers being at the helm at quarterback. So weird situation.
Yeah, that defense can only carry you so much. They did well into the second half, but like I was saying, the Jets just keep giving us body blow after body blow, and the defense kind of wore down, especially after that block punt.
Yep, that was a big one. So moving on to a game that one of us are much happier to talk about, we got the Vikings heading to Miami to take on the Dolphins and picking up a road win by the score of 24-16. Now, I said last week for my predictions that I want the Vikings to win, but I want them to play solid for 4 quarters. Didn't need to dominate, just need to play well for 4 quarters. And we did not do that at all, to say the least. It was an extremely sloppy game. Teddy Bridgewater and Skylar Thompson were able to hold up with us up until like the 3rd quarter when an interception happened and then a long run by Dalvin Cook. And it still ended up only being a 1-possession game, even after a huge turn of events back-to-back like that in the 4th quarter. So it did not look good, but we got another mark in that win column, making us one of 3 5-1 teams left, and then the Eagles stay the only undefeated team in the league. So we technically have the 2nd best record in the league, and the only loss we have is to the only undefeated team left. So it's kind of weird to say that with how sloppy we've played, in my opinion, but we've done what we needed to pick up wins. We haven't faced the highest competitions yet, so as the season goes on, I'm going to be a little nervous about that. But now we have a bye week next week to kind of regather ourselves, look at what we need to improve on, and I'm excited for this team. I really am.
Yeah, I didn't see much of it. It was on the same time as the Packers game, but winning ugly is still a win, whether it's ugly or not. And I really am surprised that Teddy didn't play better. I figured he would get in and play. I know they started Skylar Thompson, but he had a thumb injury, and Teddy came in shortly after the game started, I believe. And he really kind of lit a fire under the Vikings and threw 2 interceptions and allowed them to score a couple of touchdowns off of that.
Yeah, man, a win is a win. That's all I got to say about this game. So moving on, we have a string of much more exciting games. We have the Ravens, who went to New York to take on the Giants, and the Giants pick up a win 24-20 off of the back of a pretty bad Lamar interception and a clutch drive by none other than Danny Dimes, Daniel Jones.
Yeah, it was quite the game for the Giants, who really have just had statement win after statement win these last couple of weeks. After beating the Packers last week in London, they go to Baltimore and were able to pull the upset, really, I believe. They had that interception late in the game off of Lamar Jackson, and they were able to capitalize off of that for the go-ahead touchdown late in the game.
Just a little correction on that. It was not in Baltimore, it was in New York.
My bad.
But nevertheless, I completely agree. It was a statement win. And
still, either way.
As it goes on, the Giants might be a true contender. It's weird to say, but Brian Daboll can just work magic with those quarterbacks, I guess, because Daniel Jones hasn't had a great season, but he's been very efficient and has allowed Saquon Barkley to have a great season. So you love to see stuff like that. Next up, speaking of Brian Daboll's former team, we got the Bills, who went into Kansas City and picked up a win against the Chiefs by a score of 24-20. Now, this was a super exciting game. I didn't get to see a ton of the middle parts of it or the beginning, but I did get to see a lot of the end, and man, was that fourth quarter fun to watch. Big touchdown to Dawson Knox there to give the Bills the lead. And then it looked like we were going to have the same exact situation as last year's divisional round game. The Chiefs got the ball down by 4. I want to say there's about a minute and a half left, and at least 2 or 3 timeouts for the Chiefs. So it was not looking good for the Bills. But then on the second play, Patrick Mahomes threw a very questionable pass, which was broke on and intercepted by the Bills slot corner, Taron Johnson. So huge play by Johnson, and overall a great game for the Bills and the Chiefs. They played well, don't get me wrong, but Bills come out on top.
Yeah, it was a good game for both teams, really. And, you know, Mahomes tried to be fancy and threw one of those kind of push, no-look passes, and this one bit him for that interception late in the game. And that was really the key difference there, because with a minute and a half, that was more than enough time for the Chiefs to drive downfield and get a touchdown, which usually they do, but this time they did not.
Yep. Andy had one to Bills rookie Kaiir Elam earlier in the game in the red zone, which looked pretty bad by Mahomes standards as well. So a little sloppy on his end.
I believe it was one of his first interceptions in the red zone in his career.
Really?
I'm
not surprised by that.
I know it was the first this season for sure, but he hasn't had many in his career at all.
Yep, not surprised by that at all. So finally getting to our 2 final primetime games, we have the Sunday night game of the Cowboys heading to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles and just barely losing by a score of 26-17. Now, if you watch the start of this game, it looked like it was going to be absolute domination by the Eagles. I want to say at one point it was like 14-0, 17-0, something in that area.
20-3 at one point.
20-3 at one point, exactly. And then the Cowboys came roaring back behind Cooper Rush, and at one point it was 17-20, and the Cowboys had the game in their hand. They had a lot of opportunities to win it, but just were not able to capitalize. Eagles picked up some scores late, and they were just not able to fulfill the Cooper Rush destiny and keep him undefeated.
Yep, but now that he's not undefeated, they're going to bench Cooper Rush and bring back in Dak Prescott. So Cooper Rush got only one loss, and that was it for him.
Yeah, God, I feel bad for that guy because he has put his heart and soul into that team. But I also understand the decision by the Cowboys. When you're paying somebody that much money, it is hard to let them just sit on the bench. And then finally, our Monday Night Football game of the Broncos heading to Los Angeles to take on the Chargers. And the Chargers win at home by a score of 19-16 in overtime. The definition of a gutsy performance by
Dustin Hopkins.
Dustin Hopkins, I was blanking on his name, sorry about that. The Chargers kicker had a partially torn quad, I believe it was, which is of course the front of your leg. And he hit 4 field goals that game, went 4 for 4, including the game-winning field goal in overtime. So just a hell of a performance by him. Way to stay in. He literally dropped wreathing in pain after each and every of those 4 kicks. So you could see that he was fighting demons out there on the field. But he's able to get it done for his team. And as for the other side, get the Broncos off of prime time. There's no way. I know damn well that the NFL can start flexing these schedules and moving games around at this point.
At some point, they're going to be able to start doing that.
So keep the Broncos out of prime time, please.
Yeah, they kick a lot of field goals in prime time, that's for sure. I think they only got a couple of touchdowns in prime time, only one last night, and it was a deep pass to Greg Dulcich for his first ever career touchdown.
First start for Dulcich.
Yeah, and his first start also. So good for him. That was very nice story for that. But yeah, as far as the actual team goes, definitely the Broncos are a very iffy team, and they just are not one of the prime teams to be playing in prime time this year so far.
Yeah, Russell Wilson had approximately 188 yards in this game total. 60 to 65 of those yards came on 2 plays in the first quarter. A deep ball to Jerry Jeudy on 3rd down, and then the very next play, the touchdown that we just mentioned to Greg Dulcich on about a 30-yarder. So a third of his yards came from 2 plays in the first quarter. You just cannot have that if you want to win in prime time.
Especially after starting 10 for 10. I mean,
Exactly.
he was not able to carry any of that momentum into the rest of the game.
No, just to add to that 10 to 10, he started 9 for 9 to 9 different receivers. It's just a fun little tidbit there. But yeah, nevertheless, another loss for the Broncos. So that was our NFL Week 6 recap. Tune in tomorrow for our NFL Week 7 predictions. But until next time, don't forget
To eat the W.